Chapter 7, Vendetta. Natalia asked, "What's going on? Why are you leaving me in charge of patches and leaving town?" Jeremiah answered, "I have some unfinished business. The House of Lunstar just kidnapped my wife, and I'm going to get her back." "They what?" "You heard me. Now, if you don't mind, I'll be leaving." Natalia then grabbed Jeremiah with her paw hand and demanded, "That I'm going with you. This is a trap, and you know it. If you go there unarmed like they asked, they're just going to kill you. You know how the House of Lunsar is." "I know exactly what they're like. That's why I should have killed them all at the festival when I had the chance." Natalia then pinned Jeremiah to the floor and shouted, "I'm not letting you do this because I..." Natalia then paused as Jeremiah asked, "Because what?" "Because I still love you." Natalia then felt a small heart attack inside herself as she said the quiet part out loud and immediately let go. Sylvia then came into the room and asked, "What is going on here?" Natalia then asked Sylvia, "I'm going out of town for a bit. I need you and Agron to look after Titania and Patches while I help Jeremiah get his wife back." Jeremiah then interjected, "Then I'm doing this alone." "Going alone is out of the question." "And what are you going to do to stop me?" "Tatsu, pin him to the ground." Agron and Sylvia's dragon Tatsu then pins Jeremiah and makes him unable to grab his weapon. "Now, Jeremiah, you either agree to let me go with you and ask your sister for help, or Tatsu is not going to release you until you do." "And what makes you think a Tanuki girl like you can keep up with a top-grade bounty hunter like myself?" Natalia then threw her agent card in Jeremiah's face. "Because I'm Agent Nebraska, that's why." And after hearing those words, Jeremiah knew what was happening. He was pinned down before one of the top agents for the 50 States and Agents program herself. After careful planning, General Emilio sent out recon drones for examining prime targets amongst the mothballed dreadnoughts for his purposes, and from thenceforth captured the USS Glass Cannon to hold a planet-destroying superweapon to King Azrael's head. Emilio then said to Prince Darius, "From my reports, the mothballed dreadnoughts are not regularly guarded like the ones in active service or maintenance. However, all of them have had their fusion drives either removed or disabled, and we don't have a ship big enough to tug them out of their docking station. However, we need to capture as many as quickly as possible. I will need a skeleton crew for each one, and only enough FTL drive field and fusion drives strong enough to get them out of the moth yards and into our hands. We could be concerned with upgrading their fusion drives to ones more suitable to the ship's size once they're out in our hands. And while on the way out, we'll make sure our newly acquired dreadnoughts are tagged with American IFF, just to make sure we have an extra layer of concealment." General Emilio then began his expedition into the moth yard system with new Valkyries and immediately got to work the moment there was no one guarding their section of the moth-balled fleets. And shortly after an hour of work re-enabling the ship's fusion drives and refueling their FTL drives, General Emilio took control of the flagship and ordered the Valkyries to set course to their base of operations while taking random FTL jumps and enabling their stealth drives to evade FTL resonance sensors because the mothballed ships had no ammunition. And once the stolen ships had returned to Prince Darius' base of operations, they switched the IFF to Valkyrie codes and made safe landing with all ships returning to Emilio's expedition. Emilio then requested all ships be fully loaded for their next mission, because they had but a short time. It was early in the morning at Natalia's house, and Jeremiah tried to escape to save his wife by himself. But before Natalia could stop him, he shot her with his blaster pistol as he said, "I'm sorry, Natalia, but this is my mission, not yours." Jeremiah then left for his journey as Natalia could only watch and do nothing about it. Then a few minutes passed by, and Natalia was no longer paralyzed from the blaster shot and reached for her phone to call Jeremiah's sister. Ariana then answered the phone and asked, "Who's this?" "It's Natalia. I need to tell you something very important right now." "How important is it? I'm kind of in the middle of something right now." "It's important enough that Jeremiah's life could be in danger if you don't listen to what I have to say." Ariana then said to the press, "I'm sorry, but you'll have to excuse me for a moment." Ariana then asked, So what is endangering my brother's life? It's Lansaro. They're laying a trap for him and they're going to kill him when he shows up to the ruins of old Lansaro Palace unarmed. They have Edanthiel too, and are keeping her hostage. I will send you the note the bounty hunter Snake Eyes left behind after he abducted Edanthiel on Lansaro's payroll. I don't know what they're planning to do with her, but I need your world guard to do everything in their power to stop them and make sure Jeremiah and Edanthiel come back alive. Then you've told me everything I need to know. Ariana then returned to the press conference and announced, I'm terribly sorry to cut this short, but someone just threatened 2 of my family members and I need to address it immediately. For his next mission, Emilio ordered 75% of his new fleet of stolen ships to be fully armed and ready for what they were about to do. Now that the U.S. military knew multiple ships had been stolen, they were working tirelessly to dismantle the USS Glass Cannon before it could fall into enemy hands and be utterly worthless. And not only that, but the mothballed USS Glass Cannon also ordered reinforcements, knowing that a potential battle with the stolen fleets may be imminent. But before the reinforcements arrived, General Emilio's fleet was already on top of the Glass Cannon's skeleton crew and outnumbered them 12-1. General Emilio then radioed the fleet commander of the USS Glass Cannon. Your terms of surrender are clear. Disable your weapons and hand over the Glass Cannon, or I will take it from you. The U.S. fleet commander then ordered his ships to open fire and arm a 15-megaton nuclear warhead inside the Glass Cannon so that the planet-glassing superweapon could never operate again. But the battle was already over when Emilio's dreadnought fleets annihilated the U.S. Space Force and disabled the nuclear warhead with only seconds to spare. Then, following the conflict, Emilio seized full control of the Glass Cannon, while only losing a few ships of his own. Darius then ordered the Glass Cannon to become his new base of operations, as only a lone fighter pilot made it back to Earth. And when the pilot got back to Earth, the Pentagon immediately notified the president of the stolen USS Glass Cannon. The president then called a meeting with the president of Zulshura to joint session of Congress to declare war on the Valkyries, and furthermore, the Void Kingdom. Did you know this? USS Glass Cannon cut lore. In order to not have info dumps, I ended up posting a lot of the lore as its own text, and the lore behind the USS Glass Cannon's superweapon was part of that. But just for anyone who's curious, the USS Glass Cannon was a Super Dreadnought class superweapon that never saw active service. The reason for this was because the superweapon on board, dubbed the Glass Cannon, cost the price of 200 Andrew Jackson class dreadnought fleets, and would be a relatively easy target if a Zulshuran ace pilot knew where to hit, given the superweapon was the USS Glass Cannon's weak point. The biggest critic of the Glass Cannon was Grand Admiral Jenkins of the U.S. Space Force, describing it as a massive waste of resources given the current options. The reasons Jenkins gave were that the USS Glass Cannon would be too big of a target and was very logistically expensive and very inflexible. All things that would make it a very ineffective weapon against an enemy that expands more than one planet at a time and had the means to fight back. Instead, Jenkins proposed that instead of the Glass Cannon, it would be more effective to invest the money into upgrading already existing Andrew Jackson-class dreadnought fleets, making them more flexible than just against Zulshurans, as well as the Andrew Jackson-class dreadnought already being overkill and more well-rounded than building one massive superweapon. Such fleet upgrades would include better starfighters, making them much more capable against space pirates, which would be the most common threat after the Zulshuran War, as well as would be more suitable for planets other than Earth, Celestia, Droxus, or E4514, which were the only known planets to house large populations. In such scenarios, less expensive cruisers and carriers carrying a few dozen starfighters would be equally as effective as an Andrew Jackson-class dreadnought fleet, but far less logistically expensive. However, because of corruption and bribery, Grand Admiral Jenkins' alternative proposal was ignored in favor of the Glass Cannon.